Hey, 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 everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio. Hey, everybody. AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It's a joy to be with you today. Oh, my goodness. Tuesday, January 28th. Can you believe the month is just going by? Time is moving, and so are events. Let us talk about Gaza. Yeah, let's talk about the ceasefire. We thought that that was going to be something great. It was, but some of us in the movement said, I think there's something behind this. And it turns out there is, because now President Trump has been talking about cleaning out Gaza. And people are saying that that's no less than ethnic cleansing. So as we get into this discussion with these two fine gentlemen, I want you to go to the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. That is where we are, everybody. Hey, easy peasy, my girl Paula. Like and share, like and share, like and share, like and share. And please go to the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Once more, go there. Go to Santita Jackson and Friends on Facebook. That's the only place where I can take friends. Hey, Bernadette. Please go to Blue Sky, santitajackson.bsky.social, santitajackson.bsky.social, and of course, I am on X at Santita J, and Instagram, Santita Jackson IG. Yeah, I'm there too. So let's get right to it. Let's talk about what President Trump said. It took many people by surprise. Don't know why, but let me read this to you. In this Common Dreams report, it says, "This is ethnic cleansing," close quote. Trump's idea for Jordan and Egypt to take Gazans triggers outrage. In fact, he's saying that they can go everywhere but Gaza. Go to Jordan, go to Syria, go every place, go to Egypt, but you can't come back here. And that is behind several things that have happened. Of course, just before October 7th, I mean, like weeks before, Prime Minister Netanyahu was at the United Nations. He presented a map of the new Middle East. There was no Palestine on it. It was a greater Israel, though, that had gobbled up all these other nations. What do you think about that? And then what about the ceasefire? Many people say that about 40 or 50,000 people have been killed, but you know, the Lancet study says that that is a woeful undercount, that more than 200,000 people have been killed. And that's completely understandable. We don't know who and how many people are underneath the rubble. So what do you think about this, everybody? What about our foreign aid being cut off to everyone or every place but Israel? What does this mean? And when will there be justice for the Palestinians and security for Israelis? Seems like a real question for our times. The Common Dreams report just continues, and it says, after Trump voted the plan to clean out, as he said, Gaza, Israel's far-right finance minister, Smotrich, said that the idea, quote, of helping Gazans find other places to start new, better lives is a great idea. What do you think about that? Do they have the right of return? He was speaking to reporters on Saturday when our new president, Donald Trump, said he would like to see most of the population of war-torn Gaza be relocated to Jordan and Egypt, a plan that a number of observers said was tantamount to ethnic cleansing. I've got two brilliant minds to help us to take all of this apart. A Palestinian, Ayman Najim, I'm so glad that you're with us, and Corey Peterson Smith, young scholar from the Institute for Policy Studies, the Michael Ratner Fellow. We're so from Middle East Studies. So proud of you and so excited that you're here with us. Well, you know what? Let me start with you, Ayman, because I know, I asked you earlier about your family. You do have family there now. How are they? How are you?
Thank you, Santita, for hosting us and having me with my brother Corey Smith Patterson. Yeah, it is excruciating time for us as indigenous Palestinian people, especially in Gaza, while our families have been moved not once or twice, but more than 10 times from a place to another. We became the largest internally displaced people on earth. inside Gaza. Where I live actually in central area where most of Gaza, 2 million people are seeking, became internally displaced people inside small, a small piece of land, extremely small, because it's very important to talk sometimes about the geography of Gaza. Gaza is extremely tiny enclave of land. All of Palestine is close to the state of Delaware, but it is 8 times in terms of population density.
Mm.
So very important that our families have been actually facing the most live stream genocide recorded in human history, and also the ecocide of that is going on Gaza. Our families, like I'm gonna dive deeper into the personal aspect of this genocide because it is hidden from mainstream media or from as we are numbers. No, we have aspiration, we have goals, we have dreams as any indigenous people on earth. uh, During this genocide, which I actually one of those people who said that Gaza genocide is a process, not an act, not an event. It is infrastructure. We had been saying that Gaza under a slow motion genocide since 17 years after imposing a very strict siege on Gaza. I mean, we have been saying and we have been screaming and we have been warning. So what's going on after October? It was accelerated ongoing genocide. And I can mention facts and data and about the number of cancer patients, the number of people who are disallowed to travel overseas for medical treatment. But for this genocide, personally, I lost my brother and sister lost their houses. Literally, my aunts, all of my aunts in Khan Yunis city lost all of their houses. Khan Yunis, which is in the south of Gaza Strip, became a ghost town, a pulverized town. So, and also my aunts and my brothers and my sisters have been struggling to keep up with this genocide because, like, you know, starvation, the uptick rise of hepatitis A and C, a lot of medical issues that I wish we will have the time to dive into. But what I want to focus on that this genocide would not be happening without the support of the United States. Without 80% of this genocide was aided by the United States for a reason I really don't understand. I mean, 80% of your funding going to kill indigenous people in a very tiny enclave of land, just for me mind-boggling and heart-wrenching too. So yeah, hopefully this genocide will end. And actually, our request as indigenous people for a long time is not about ceasefire. It's about our freedom. We want to cast the yoke of oppression. We don't want our kids to live what we have been experiencing since our childhood. This is what we are dreaming of as every oppressed people on earth. So we are not invention in the human history. We are part of that human history. I want to be with that human history.
So when you hear him say that he wants to clean Gaza out, when you hear Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, and others say that this would be great lakefront property, or should I say waterfront property, they want that it would make a beautiful resort. When you know about the vast resources there, when you know that the president himself is a real estate developer, what does that make you think?
Yeah, thank you for this question. I think this is it is kind of megalomaniac personality is trying to control the world by like being blunt and brash about things. There is a history in the making. In 1897, there was a Basel Congress in Switzerland, and there were two envoys, one to Palestine, and when they came to the Zionist Congress back then, they said the bride is beautiful, but it is married to another person. It means that we are clinging to our land, and they actually, when they try to analyze what does it mean, the bride is beautiful and it is married to another person, that the farmers, the indigenous people are clinging to their land, are stuck with their land, are believing in their land. It's not that easy, like to leave your land. So to clean out Gaza, I read it actually, but I see it like it's just like an example of the far right wing in Israel. Like Smotrich said, Gaza should be depopulated. Actually, from the first days of the genocide, we have been actually disgusted by every day they have to leave to Jordan, they have to go to Egypt, they have to go. We have to keep 200,000 people in Gaza, and we have to eliminate all of them. It's very absurd. It's very stupid that to think about this, and actually United States is funding that kind of far right wing, especially liberal Biden, for instance, during this genocide, sent billions of dollars. So actually, even in mainstream media right now, they are talking about the hostages. They are not talking about 15,000 political prisoners inside the Israeli jails.
Well, aren't they, many of them, hostages because they're being held under, what is it, administrative hold? They've not been charged. Many of them have not been charged.
Yeah.
And so they're being held. That's like hostage to be.
Yeah. And this is the only nation that they have administrative detention, and no one can talk about it. Even no one can dare to talk about it. We have 15,000. Like yesterday, because of one hostage, actually, they stopped 1 million people from going from the south to the north of Gaza. 1 million people in regard to one person. Million people. Imagine that we are living in the 21st century and you hold 1 million people hostage in their own indigenous land. So for me, as someone who studied community psychology, for me it's mind-boggling that we have, even you don't see it in the media, the mainstream media, as we are the inferno, as Frantz Fanon said, or we are like out of humanity. Like, it's just mind-boggling. But when I say something about the Trump deal of the century before I give it to my brother Corey, back within Trump first term, he spoke about the deal of the century, and we have said that the theft of the century is a form of slavery designed to keep the enslaved more enslaved, the dehumanized more dehumanized, the demonized more demonized. It is a form of ethnic superiority over the indigenous people and the right of the powerful to dictate the reality on the oppressed nations. So this is for a long time, and all of the Palestinian communities in Palestine and in diaspora refused actually that deal of the century that Trump actually promised $52 billion to Gaza. It means, in a nutshell, you buy us your land and we will take it. For Israel, greater Israel dreams and prophecies that we will take all of Palestine. But I don't think Palestinian, or we will leave our land because we have in 1948 some people were some Egypt and Jordan and others said, some Arabic countries said, you go to Gaza Strip and the West Bank and you will come back. And then what will happen? We have 2.3 million refugees in Jordan. We have 1.7 million inside 48 Palestine, and we have millions, the largest refugee problem across the globe. So we don't believe like go for in short term or a long term. This is just like stupid, and we are not stupid to to allow this to happen to us again. Yeah, thank you.
Well, I mean, I don't think this is a reflection of your intelligence. And so let's talk about this with Corey Peterson Smith, brilliant young intellectual from the Institute for Policy Studies. He's their Michael Ratner Fellow for Middle East Studies. Corey, what did you make of the ceasefire, and then days later, the president says we just need to clean out Gaza, and then also in the frame you have to. They've been talking about redeveloping this into a community. Well, of course, it's mineral rich, so they can get a lot of oil and other precious minerals out of that land. But they're talking about turning it into a resort. Corey Peterson Smith, help me understand what we're looking at.
Well, I'll start by echoing the gratitude for being on the show with my brother Ayman, and to you for hosting us and having a conversation about this really important topic. And so to help you make sense of it, to be honest, I think you already see it. I mean, when you take an indigenous people's land and say, well, this is prime real estate, now we have to clean the place out. I mean, even when Trump uses the term demolition site, which is precisely the language that real estate developers use, it is exactly what it is. It is what you think it is. It's a forced removal of an indigenous people. That's what he wants. And that has always been the plan. I mean, I just want to make that really clear. Thinking about Gaza in particular, the Gaza region of Palestine, the majority of people living there, the majority of Palestinians living there, were forcibly displaced from elsewhere in Palestine, when the state of Israel was founded in 1948. So the majority of this population, a Palestinian population in Gaza, they've already been removed, as part of a process that has gone on since well before 1948. And so what Trump is voicing is the next stage. He's calling for the next stage, and we can't let him get away with it. But he's calling for the next stage in a process that's been going on for decades. You asked about the ceasefire, and I'll just speak to that real quick. On one hand, the ceasefire, I want to acknowledge its importance. I want to acknowledge that it means that at this moment, people who were in the crosshairs a few days ago are not. People who did not have access to medical attention a few days ago now have access and maybe might be saved. I've seen these incredible images of families being reunited. And so I want to recognize the significance of the ceasefire kind of in this moment, while also recognizing just how, well, a couple things. One is that they already tried to make Gaza unlivable. As my brother Ayman said, for 17 years, they starved Gaza, they blockaded Gaza, to a point where the UN reported that Gaza would be uninhabitable by 2020. And so here we are, 5 years later, and folks are still living there. So they've tried to remove Palestinians from Gaza. They tried in the past year and a half to make it so unbearable through their bombing, through their mass starvation, through the destruction and attack on every single hospital, all the schools, et cetera. They tried to make it so people left. And the fact is, all these folks remain. So just the fact that that a ceasefire was reached speaks to Palestinian resilience, the fact that folks are still in Gaza, and have survived. And at the same time, I have to talk about, let's step back from Gaza for a second, acknowledge that Israel actually already agreed to another ceasefire in Lebanon, which they've been violating the entire time. And actually, according to the terms of that ceasefire, Israeli forces were supposed to have withdrawn from Lebanon right now, and they haven't. And Israeli government said, we're not leaving Lebanon, actually. So they're already in violation of a ceasefire, a so-called ceasefire, that they made to the north of Gaza. So I don't trust the Israeli government to honor this ceasefire now, even if we could acknowledge, that for the moment it buys some time. We have to recognize that this is not an honest broker, in the Israeli government.
But help me. Let's back up now, because there's something that you gotta help me to make sense of, Curry. Of course, Institute for Policy Studies fellow, they're Michael Ratner Fellow for Middle East Studies. Now, you got to help me to understand this. Agreements continue to be made with Israel. They continue to break them, and yet continue to be made with them.
Right.
Are you following my meaning? I'm trying to figure out how that happens, and who has the leverage to force their hand. I'm asking that question, Curry and Ayman, because this is unsustainable. You cannot carry on this way and not expect something bad to happen over time. Curry, you have too many people. Many people in the Israeli government have said, we're looking to kill women and children, because if we kill the children, we kill the women because they give birth to the children, we kill the children because they will become our opponents. But it's more than the Palestinians. People all over the world are outraged. We had a young service member burn himself to death in Washington, D.C. in front of the embassy, Curry. A lot of people see this injustice, and as we look at the anniversary of one of the horrible events of the Holocaust just the other day, that's an outrage 80 years later. This is an outrage.
That's right.
Corey, help me to understand this because none of this is working. And I want to remind everyone, Jewel and Ethelene and Robert and Andre and everyone, please thumbs up, easy peasy, thumbs up, like and share, like and share, like and share. I mean, you can tell all your friends to go to the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. That's right. Tell them to go there right now. That's right, because we want to know what's going on. Everybody, thumbs up, thumbs up. I need you to thumbs up, like and share the show, and tell this story. Because Corey, I don't understand. I don't understand what I need. I need you to help me to understand how we continue to make deals with people who continue to break the deals, but we continue to make the deals. I understand that. Help me.
Well, I think that what a lot of Americans are seeing now is something that the rest of the world has already been seeing, which is that the U.S. says one thing, in terms of respecting international law, in terms of an international rule-based order, in terms of respecting human rights, but the practices are totally the opposite. The UN General Assembly, it's not just Palestinians who refuse to accept, this Israeli apartheid and genocide. The UN General Assembly has again and again and again for decades condemned the many Israeli violations of Palestinian rights. This past, a year ago, the International Court of Justice ruled, Israel, you are in violation of the genocide. You are plausibly in violation of the Genocide Convention. You have to stop what you're doing in Gaza. They said it again later in the year, So this is not like just the opinion. It's not just my opinion. It's not just Ayman's opinion. This is the legal finding of the arbiters of international law, along with popular opinion all over the world, right? And folks are seeing the reality, which is that it's actually the United States. You ask who's enabling this? It's the United States that's enabling this genocide. It's the United States that's enabling this apartheid. And I have to say that it really goes very deep. Trump made this notion. He said these words about "quote unquote" cleaning Gaza out. It's hard to even say them.
What did he mean by that? Because he just said
forcibly removing. Yeah, he means removing the Palestinian population and displacing them to neighboring countries, which is what has happened for decades. This is why there is such a large Palestinian population in Jordan and in Lebanon and in Syria. It's because the
Queen of Jordan is Palestinian.
Right. They've been forcibly displaced, right, to these neighboring countries and to refugee camps within their own country. And why folks are in this country, and elsewhere around the world. So that's what he's talking about. And as per usual, Trump is saying the quiet part loud, but this has been the policy. And I just want to add that he said this, just days after his inauguration speech, where he spoke glowingly about so-called westward expansion and so-called manifest destiny, and talked about how Americans are pioneers who took this land, and he talked positively about the forced removal of the people indigenous to this place that's now called the United States. So what he's really speaking to is something that's very deep, and it's something very deep that the rest of the world sees, and I think finally a lot of Americans are starting to see.
Well, maybe that's maybe that's the rub here, that this is why, and Dr. Richard Wolff said this. He said, this is what we've done in the United States, Ayman. I mean, that's why we're here. Maybe that's part of the rub. Ethelene Crenshaw always gives us all my morning stars just give us so much brilliance. But I want you to speak to this. And Ethelene, I have put on my reading glasses. Yes, Ayman, I am here now. It's my life. It's part of my life. Curie doesn't understand this. He's not here yet. She said, it saddened me to hear President Donald J. Trump trying to have the people of Gaza removed to Egypt and Jordan. But I'm relieved to hear and see that is not happening. The people of Gaza have said that they would rather die in Gaza than be forced to move again. My heart goes out to the Palestinians. You know, when my father was running for president, when he and my mother went to the Middle East in '79, uh, they would tell you we didn't know that what we were walking into was going to be so momentous. And I said, well, would you have done it? He said, sure. He said, did we take massive hits? Absolutely. And running for president, no one even does that now. It's been more than 40 years. But he ran on that as part of his platform. Israeli security, Palestinian justice. At that time, we had a no-talk policy. I don't know if you were born, Curry, but you couldn't mention the proper noun Palestinian in public discourse. Mm-hmm. You could not. You just could not do it. You couldn't do it. And so, my point is we have made a lot of progress, but Etheline makes the point, and I'd like for you to speak to this, and Curry, understand this, just because those of us who come out of as African Americans, as Black people, whose families were enslaved here, there's a song, Before I'll Be a Slave, I'll be buried in my grave, and I'll go home to my Lord and be free.
Right.
And so what Etheline is saying, it's coming from that tradition.
Yes.
So when we see, Curry, I think I feel church coming on here. Because we'll say, no, my life is not, I'll go home and be with I'll go home and be with God, but I'm not going to let you do this to me. Now, I will go back to Gaza with level buildings, and that's what I think I'm hearing your people say, Iman.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you again. I just want to compliment what Corey said, and I will answer your question. So also we in the U.S. we filed a federal case on November 13, accusing Biden, Austin, and Blinken for aiding and abetting genocide and complicity in genocide. That was a federal case. Yesterday was exactly 1 year since the hearing in Auckland, where the judge said he implores the U.S. government to stop funding Israel. And he said this is a plausible case of genocide. I wish that case, the federal judge said this is a genocide and everything should be stopped directly. So my family houses can be existing right now. They are not in the open air or like trying to find a place. My sister wouldn't have to develop a thymoma, which is a rare kind of cancer. Thymoma is a rare kind of cancer in Gaza. I will see all of my aunts in Rafah and Gaza City. I will see like all of our Gaza is also, it is our we were born and raised there. It means a lot for us. The Mediterranean Sea, the orange, the olives, everything is just our history. They want to obliterate even our own past and present, but we will keep writing about it. We will keep documenting about it. So to your question, actually during this genocide, I went to Egypt and I was trying to get my family, especially my dad and my mom, to Egypt because they have complicated health issues. And my mother told me, I cannot leave my grandkids, and I cannot leave your dad, or we have to come together. But we cannot leave because we cannot leave our own land. And our soul is not much better than the souls of the people who are living here. So even I told them, if I am in your shoes, I will do the same. But I am your son. If you are in my shoes, you will think the same. So this is in response to your question. So we have lived for 100 years from Balfour Declaration 1917, in which in that time they want to create a buffer state in the Middle East to control the resources and to extract more resources from the Middle East.
Well, no, stay right there, because I don't think we really understand that this is a resource-rich area.
Yeah, actually, the Middle East, first, this is what I believe, Palestine is the epicenter of everything. This is what I believe, not because I am Palestinian, but because Jesus is a Palestinian. We have the Church of Nativity. We have the where Jesus Christ was born. We have Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. Muhammad, he was tethered to the highest heaven from Palestine. We have the Ibrahimi Mosque in Palestine. We have actually in Gaza, we have three churches that are one of the oldest in the human history, 1600 years. We have three churches that have been obliterated, actually. I want to mention that 830 mosques have been totally, completely wiped out. And we have three churches that they are extremely, extremely old. Like, I mean, if you look at Gaza churches, you will be surprised how old are they. And we have an Omari mosque, which is 1400 years ago, have been actually completely destroyed. So it was also, I call it cultural side. It's not even a genocide, it's an ecocide, it is cultural side, it is heritage side. So this is so for your question, in 1917, Balfour, which is the British Foreign Ministry, a foreign minister promised the Zionists in that time, the Zionist gangs, to come to Palestine and to take Palestine from
the Balfour Agreement. You're speaking of the
Balfour Declaration. So this is the Balfour Declaration. As I told you, there's 1897 Basel Congress program about the idea of them coming to Palestine. 1917, that we were under the British mandate, and which the British foreign minister promised a land to the Zionist people who are actually in Western and Eastern Europe. So very important to share. In that time, we actually welcomed everyone coming from all over the globe, come to Palestine. Palestine was under mandated Britain. We welcomed everyone as refugees. We welcomed everyone as we are a nation. We welcomed everyone. We couldn't imagine in 1936, there was the Porak Revolution, the first non-violent Porak Revolution, called Porak Revolution, the first non-violent, in which we actually saw that people like actually bringing guns and bringing munition to Palestine. That's why we call 1936 the Porak Revolution was one of the most historic moments in Palestinian history of non-violence, and beginning in 1948. So that was to create a buffer state in the Middle East. What does it mean? It means to extract their resources, to practice colonialism and settler colonialism, or what I call it zero colonialism. What does mean zero colonialism in my own understanding? You don't want to occupy a land. You can occupy their minds. As you see, we have a lot of dictators in the Arab wars, and you just control their minds. You don't do anything. Just control, give them money, billions of dollars, and you can control what they do. And they are dictators, and that's fine. That's fine if we are in the United States to deal with dictatorship in the Middle East. If they are within our interests, we would love them. If they are against our interests, they will become bad people. So if we abide by human rights, there is no like human rights should be human rights, not just because of this love me or hate me kind of thinking.
Well, I mean, I want to know who the players are. I mean, Corey, the Saudis are very, very powerful. What are they doing? What about Qatar? What are they doing? I mean, but let me start with you, Corey. You've got some powerful players. But is anyone on the side of the Palestinians? Corey, you've got some power.
Yeah, I think that these states, each of them, are pursuing their interests, as states, and they're trying to see what they can get out of this moment. There's all these states throughout the Middle East at the moment that are vying for power, trying to figure out their role in shaping what comes next, whether we're talking about Saudi Arabia, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Turkey, Egypt, of course, Israel. And so they're all trying to see what they can get. But to answer your question, are anyone on the side of the Palestinians, in a real sense, the history shows that the Palestinians have been abandoned, again and again by these different states. And of course, it's the United States, which, by the way, supplies weapons to every single state I just named, you know, and who has positioned itself as the kind of convener, you know, of the new Middle East. You know, they are trying to decide on a vision that maintains the power of those states that are already powerful. And actually, before this latest, you know, chapter of horrific genocide, and actually going back to the first, you know, the first Trump administration, there was something called the Abraham Accords.
Yeah.
You know, the purpose of that, which is a set of agreements between, you know, the Israeli government and a number of Arab states, so-called normalization, so-called peace agreements. The whole purpose of that was to remove the question of Palestine and Palestinians away from the negotiating table when it comes to figuring out the shape of the so-called new Middle East. You know, to say, we actually, basically these countries, you know, the United Arab Emirates, Morocco, Bahrain, Sudan, they were saying, we actually don't need justice for the Palestinians to make a deal with Israel, to normalize relations with Israel. That was the whole purpose, is to get rid of the question of Palestine and Palestinians, and the question of Palestinians returning to the lands that they've been expelled from, you know. So it really is a history. There's a history of betrayal here of various states in the region when it comes to the question of Palestine and Palestinians. But yeah, I so appreciate throughout this conversation, both you and Ayman directing it to the resilience of Palestinian people. You know, Palestinians they refuse to be expelled fundamentally as a nation. They persist and they remain in the face of incredible violence. And frankly, if after all of this violence that folks have witnessed, you know, over this year and a half, you know, Nora Erekat and many others have talked about how this is the world's first live stream genocide. Yeah. So we see it, you know, we see this violence, we see them bombing hospitals and schools, etc. If after all this, Palestinians are still in Gaza, they're not leaving. You know what I mean? Like it's a matter of time before Palestine is free. And so the question is how much more violence will the U.S. support between now and then? Because Palestinian freedom is coming. That's the direction of history. We see it.
Well, you know, and then the next question for you, Curie, and then for you, Ayman, is this: how much longer will the world tolerate this?
Oh, we've already reached the tipping point. I mean, you know, it should be. We should understand. We have to remind ourselves constantly that the notion that Palestinian rights are controversial, that's a very American conversation.
Yes.
All around the world, it is understood, you know, who the aggressor is and who the oppressed is. You know, it's very straightforward.
I want you to say that again for the audience, for people who are listening, because I don't think that people really understand that this is the only place in the world where this conversation is framed this way.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, and you can see it again if you go to all these votes in the UN General Assembly. The whole world lines up in support of Palestinian rights and in condemnation of Israeli violations, and the U.S. and Israel and maybe one or two other U.S. allies are on the other side against the whole world. And then, you know, I assume, you know, your listeners travel. Go to Latin America, go to Europe, you know, go to Africa and talk to folks. And people are like, of course we support Palestinian rights, you know? So this is a very U.S. conversation. And actually what's happened over this year and a half, I'm very proud of the outpouring of support for Palestinian rights in the U.S. What's really happened is that Americans have joined the rest of the planet in recognizing, you know, Israeli colonial violence.
Do you think that puts us on a collision course with our own history?
You know, I hope so. And to be frank, you know, I'm so glad that you brought up the Black freedom struggle as well, because I actually think that this moment, you know, the outpouring of protests we've seen in this country in the past year and a half, of course, people are moved by what's happening to Palestinians in Palestine. But I think also the young people, especially, this is the generation in college now, they were in high school and middle school during the 2020 uprisings for Black folks. Right? They saw that reckoning with not only the current injustice against Black people, but our own history deep history of institutional racism. And I think they learned something, and they took those eyes and looked at Palestine, and they saw with a clarity. So yes, I do think that this is the thing about Palestine is the same thing about the Black freedom struggle. If you look at it honestly, it forces you to look at everything.
Well, you know, I saw it in the late 70s, and I can understand the ire directed toward Reverend Jackson, particularly just being such a giant figure out of the Black church, because that is still the great organizing mechanism for Black people in America, and quite frankly, for people in America. They say that, I think Malcolm X said that the most segregated hour in America is at 12 o'clock on Sunday.
Right.
You go to your church, I go to mine. That's the way it works. And because he took this discussion into the church,
yeah,
it became it became part of our theology, and it became part of the freedom struggle, because our freedom struggle has always been church based, even when as people have moved away from it. There's something about the culture that doesn't get away from it, right? And so I'm trying to find out. You know, because my point is the baton has been passed, and now we're moving forward.
Yes.
Right? I mean, this was the lobby that tried to destroy Reverend's candidacies. You know, it was, and people are doing documentaries and whatnot about his candidacies now, but that is the one area that they do not want to touch. They're like, no, we don't. Well, no, I'm like, no. There's a reason we had the fruit of Islam as protection. And they used to get into fights with the Secret Service, but that's its own story. The Secret Service said, we don't trust you. And the Secret Service were like, what are we going to do? We were like, we're going to have to figure it out. But they told you they've already secured the building. And since they don't trust you, but, and also part of the point is, if it's been a fight, Iman, to get this fight onto the stage, to get this start, but here it is. And now the young people, what did Jonathan Greenblatt of the ADL, who just excused Elon Musk for his salute, he said, we got to give him some grace. Oh my gosh. I haven't gotten over that. I haven't gotten over it. I've got the vapors. It angers me, quite frankly, because it's so racist. Because the only people they go after are people of color. White people they leave alone on anti-Semitism, and white people are the ones who perpetrated this. I'm like, are you kidding me? This didn't take place in Africa. It didn't take place in Asia. This took place in Germany. So, you know, having said that, and I hope I stay on the air behind that, but that's okay. I said these things. We only have about 6 or 7 minutes left here, and I want you all to help us to understand where we go from here, because now the president has said the quiet part out loud. He said where they have been going all along. We've got to clean out Gaza. It seems like all this has been pretextual. That, this was going to be the one last thing that was going to get everybody out. No, that's not going to happen. These folks are going back home. And they are saying, before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave. I'm not leaving. Oh, what is it? From Dreamgirls. And I'm telling you, I'm not going. They're not going. What is next, Iman?
I don't think no one can clean out Gaza, because you have seen the last 2 days, you have seen millions of people are moving from the north, from the south to the north, and all of their houses are wiped out, and they will erect a tent and live close to the tent. This has never been actually in other human history that I studied, from Rwanda to Cambodia to people are really willing to erect a tent with a tarp, if there is a tarp, and they will go to their wiped out houses. As you know, 80%, 85 to 90% of Gaza have been obliterated from the face of the earth. But people said, I was watching today actually, in very deep pain actually, that people are going to the north, and someone asked, a journalist asked someone, this is like local media, why you are leaving? He said, I know that I am going there and I have to erect a tent, but there is a smell in your home There is a smell to your indigenous land that no colonizer can smell.
Mm-hmm.
So this is really very important, like in terms of ethnography and autoethnography about genocide, about people like voices that they you cannot see it in the mainstream media. Okay? You cannot, like, you feel like a huge divide between what we hear from CNN, of course, Fox News, but also what we hear from the indigenous people on the ground. So I don't think, I think people who foiled the ethnic cleansing after 15 months, they won't allow this to happen again. I think they can stand. In Palestine history, we have Faris Auda. Faris Auda is a young child who actually, there was a Merkava tank, and he stood in front of the Merkava tanks. He said, "You will not, lan tamurru, you will not pass." So this is the indigenous psychology. A child like want to stand on their lands, and this is, honestly, I wish everyone can understand the psychology of Palestinians who are living under settler colonial projects since their birth, or if they, like I lived all of my life under occupation, under curfews after 6 p.m. every day. We lived in this way for like since all of our childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And adult, so it's very important, like, to why people are keeping on their lands, because this is their indigenous land. If they leave it, they won't come back. And this happens for us in 1948, happens for us in 1967, and etc. I'm not gonna go into chronology of our history, but I don't think people will do it. One last thing, someone asked someone, or actually, or also on local media, asked him, if I know that I will be stranding in the south of Gaza with a tent, I will stay in my destroyed houses in the north. It is much better to be in a tent, because they were in a tent on the shoreline, so that the sea, the ocean, or the sea can flood their tents. So they have been under enormous, immense pain and suffering. That we hope that all of our pain and suffering will materialize in a free Palestine.
Corey, something has got to change in American policy, Ayman, because the American people have changed their minds. I mean, as I was to complete my thought about Jonathan Greenblatt, the head of the Anti-Defamation League, he was saying in a meeting whose contents leaked or were leaked, he said, you all are missing what's going on out here. He said this after October 7th, I guess November, December something. He said, we have lost the PR war.
Yep.
This is not a right-left issue anymore. This is generational. We've lost the next generation. Talk to me, because you're part of that next generation. See, this is something Ayman and I debated about. That was the fight, right? Now, they've gone down the street. And what do you see in the future, Corey?
Well, this is why I say it's only a matter of time. And truthfully, not just Greenblatt, but the other astute observers, they see the same thing. Jack Lew, the outgoing U.S. ambassador to Israel, he gave this incredible interview with the Times of Israel. Folks should look it up. And he said, look, he said it's the Biden. He said Biden is the last president, the last American president who has a certain narrative of Israel, going back to the Israeli kind of origin story. He said, for other people in the younger generations, the point of reference is not the Israeli story of the so-called War of Independence. The point of reference is this genocidal war. He didn't use the word genocide, but he said this is how these younger generations, this is their point of reference. And he said, we may not see it right away, but people who are now in their 20s and 30s and 40s, the people who will go on to be the decision makers, the policy makers, et cetera, in this country, he said Israel is in for tough times. So once again, it's only a matter of time, because it's true. They've already lost. They've already lost the what international legal scholars call the narrative war. They've already lost it.
But Trump even said that some months ago in an interview that was set up by one of his most prominent Jewish supporters.
Right.
He said, "You guys, you've got to finish this."
Right.
I'm paraphrasing him. You remember the interview? He said, "Because you don't understand how you're looking in the world. This looks so bad for you." It's not that he was saying, I'm fighting for Palestinian rights. No, he was like the optics on this because he's a marketer.
Yeah. No, he gets it. He pays attention to that, and it's true. They don't understand that they have already lost. I mean, the number one song in Israel last year, the number one song on Spotify, the most streamed song was a genocidal anthem about killing Palestinians and about killing their supporters. Okay, and for them it's normal. Like there's a kind of normalization of this dehumanization of Palestinians that for them seems normal, but outside of the Israeli context, they seem it's a society that's out of control, that has embraced genocide, and the rest of the world sees it. It's not just the Palestinians. The majority of the world has been with Palestinians for a long time. Now the majority of Americans, for the first time in U.S. history, the majority of Americans have said the U.S. should stop sending weapons to Israel.
Republicans and Democrats.
That's right. That's right. Okay. So it really is a matter of time. And I think that for those of us who already respect Palestinian rights and who recognize, their right to be to their own land and to live lives of freedom and dignity, we have to fight to make sure that we're not losing lives on the way to the inevitable, which is a free Palestine. Free Palestine will be free. And so the question is, when will it be free? And we in the United States have to do our part, to stop the flow of these weapons.
Not if, but when.
When, that's right.
Very few, Ayman, before we came on the air. And I've had so many wonderful experiences in the course of my life, including my parents said, my mother said, "I think I have to hold you kind of responsible for this." I said, "Why?" She said, "Well, because remember when you met Yasser Arafat in Cuba?" I said, "Yes. And you came back and you said, you've got to go," because he had invited me to Lebanon. I was 14, Corey. And my parents said, "Well, you cannot go." But we will go. And I promise you, and my mother, just a few months later, bless her heart, she went and she was forever changed and absolutely devastated by what she saw. And the thing is, we're talking about loving everybody. That's, Ayman you're looking at a broken heart right now, and a fearful one. When you see the Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, her grandmother lives in the West Bank. This is not an academic discussion for her. I mean, every time she calls home, because home is where your grandmama is, she doesn't know if she's going to answer the phone. She doesn't know what's going to happen. So, and then I have friends who are in Tel Aviv and they're scared. I understand that. But I know that when I talk to them, this has to stop. This can't go on. It can't. It just can't. And so, we're praying for everybody. Because somewhere in this conflict is the human struggle. And I think that if we can resolve this, so much in humankind can be resolved. So much. This land means so much to all of us in the world. Ayman Najim, my dear brother, and Kuri, our nephew and son. This is what happens when you're an elder. I'm an African, so guess what? I'm an auntie to you. There we go. Sending you both so much love. Ayman, would you like to say something before we go?
Yes, I can.
anything you'd like to say before we go? You would have
I,
to.
yeah, I just want to thank you so much for your being unswerving to justice, to being for being giving us the space because we have been actually censored out as indigenous people, as academics, as scholars, as normal people. We have been censored out, and to give us a space, it really means a lot. It gives, the importance of your the history of your dad. When I was in New Jersey, I heard about a president or someone will be elected, like nominated as a president from African American professor. So I am so honored to be in his daughter company. And yeah, we need you. We need our brothers and sisters from Latin America to Africa, American, black radical traditions, and other segments of the American people, like to support actually an inalienable rights of the indigenous people of Palestine. Really, and is also honored to see my brother. Usually we see each other in person, but today is virtually. So so it's good to, and it's good to see you both, and I hope we can connect in the future.
We are together, sending you so much love. Everybody, in the next hour, let's talk about consent decrees. President Trump wants to suspend those. If he does, what does that mean? Does that mean that police will have free reign with us to do whatever they wish? Let's talk about it on the Santita Jackson Show, AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. See you in just a minute.